Okay, I've just been editing my sister K-Splat's video, and she died. I guess I'm going to start heading over there now. Okay, we're approaching where she was last sighted. Right here, this tower. Hopefully, if her stuff is all... Yes, it's all here. Oh, I feel so good about that. In the video, she seemed so sad. I just wanted to help out. There we go. 2 chests. I'll put all my stuff in here. She won't be able to not notice it, if that should be it. Now I've got to head back and get my stuff as well. And oh, I was about to go at night. That's a bad idea. Close the chest. Okay, I've got all of my stuff back now. In fact, actually, 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'll put these on for now. And I guess that's that. We've sorted it all out. Okay, so after a little bit of trial and error, I got an unbreaking dude because I think that's kind of important. But as for the mending, it's for 22 emeralds, and I don't think that using a zombie villager. Also, yes, I've got epic trousers on. I think even after using a zombie villager, it'll still be at least a little bit expensive. So I'm gonna just keep, you know, trying this out until I actually get a better mending book. Oh, also, I was about to cut off then, but I've got a little villager breeder exit here. And it's been breeding way too many, so I don't know what's going to happen with the cramming. Also, for some reason in 1.16.2, you can punch a villager, and they don't seem to get upset about it. So, carrying on with the villager place, I've got this bit dug out a bit more, because I wanted to put in some back to where the villagers were, in there. And I've got a mending book for 14 emeralds. Very soon I'm going to have to get a zombie in here so that I can actually cure a zombie villager. I also got the farmer in here. He trades my carrots. Also, once again, my levels have gone down again. Because when I was making the area for cat, a creeper blew up right behind me. And yeah, I'm now back at 6 levels, which isn't bad because ResoluteDefender, I know, has been working on a mob farm over in the distance. I'll go show you in a bit because I'm gonna have to work on it as well. For now, I think the next task that I have to do is to go down here and mine out a big area for me to start a villager trading hall in, and hopefully I'll get something good done there. Got to ResoluteDefender's mob farm. You can see this is quite close to it, and actually so is the village, and yeah, we're all quite close. And I was just looking because there's a floating dog sitting down, and there's also a sunken ship down there. I think this is a very cursed image, so I'm just going to make my way up to the top here. My plan for this is to just extend the mob farm upwards, and if I can, I'll also figure out a storage solution for it. But all in all, I think this should be quite good. So I'll either see when... Oh, hello. Hello. I'll see you when it's done, or I might time-lapse it. I don't know, but you will. You will now. You'll know now. Tiny, 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 tiny time-lapse. 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 Tiny, 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 tiny time lapse. 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 Tiny, 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 tiny time lapse.
Tiny, 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 tiny time lapse. Tiny, 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 tiny time lapse. Tiny, 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 tiny time lapse. Tiny, tiny,
Tiny, tiny time lapse. Tiny, 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 tiny time lapse. Tiny, 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 tiny time lapse. Tiny, 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 tiny time lapse. Tiny, 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 tiny time lapse. Tiny, 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 tiny time lapse. Tiny. Okay, so I've added an extra layer onto the top of the farm. You probably just saw it in the time lapse, which I did end up doing, thankfully. But I think every now and then we're going to have someone going up into there and getting rid of all of the spiders, because when ResoluteDefender made it, he wants there to be spiders in the spawner just so that it doesn't decrease the efficiency of the whole farm. Besides, this is, I think, only a temporary farm as well. So I'll be making a zombified piglin farm or something like that in the future. But the key thing is that for the moment this will work. And I'm also nearly at 30 levels. Get some emeralds. Craft some emeralds. Villagers. Bookshelves. Home. Cross the scary, scary nether. Place some bookshelves. Realise that you didn't buy enough bookshelves. Place the bookshelves. Count the bookshelves. Ah, 15. Perfect. I think I'm ready to make myself a pickaxe and put it in. Oh. I have no lapis. Okay, please, 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 please. But, hell yeah. Hell yeah. I've got an epic pickaxe. And I'm gonna... Oh, that would have been bad. I'm gonna go over here and celebrate my pickaxe. Oh, I'm actually so happy with that pickaxe, though. Actually, I've still got 30 levels. I think I'm gonna make myself an axe. Okay, let's see. What are the oh, silk touch. The question is, do I go for it? You know what? I can gain 2 levels again. Okay, that's absolutely terrible. I shouldn't have done that. Now my life is ruined, and everything's gonna fail, and I'm destined for... I'm gonna farm some levels. So far I've got Anthony and random diamond axe that I'm gonna enchant. But most of all, the good thing about this design is that I'm able to collect music discs. You see, these in total, I think I've got 9 here, and that means that I only need 4 more and to get all 13. But because we're going nether busting, I guess that's what you call it, then it's gonna be complete. I will have a full set. But I'm going to go nether busting in a stream now. Anyway, see ya. That I should probably show you the new villager trading hall. The cool thing about this is that most of it is actually underwater. So I know at the moment it may look ugly, but I'm also going to have a bunch of glass around the edge here, so that we can have a sort of greenhouse type thing, but underwater. In fact, this room could be all of the main villages, and I could have a room going off in this direction, or maybe even in this direction, or in this direction, just to have extra room for some more villagers. But I got a message from Kronos, and they are joining the server. So I think I'm gonna go welcome them now, and then I can show you what we got from Nether Busting. Okay, so he's gonna come on the server imminently. Just waiting now. Just running around in circles, and waiting, and running, and waiting, and circling, and running, and circling, and waiting, and circling, and running, and waiting, and running, and circling. Dang it. And there we go. He's joined. The lad has joined. Right, where is he? It's Perry the Kronos. No. Oh wow, he fits in with the parrot. He looks like the parrot. That's brilliant. Right, so what are you gonna say? Do you want wood? Do you need wood? Also, I don't think I've actually really properly shown his base on camera before. But yeah, so he's been working on this house, and yeah, it carried on like that. Well, I've got to say that was a bit of fun. It was really quite. It's really quite good that we've got more people joining the server, because now we have more people to actually play and do stuff. But for now, I need to go mining because I've completely run out of iron, and as we can see here, I guess I've not run out of diamonds anymore. How many did I get? 15 diamonds. Well, that's more than I had last mining session, so I guess I'll just continue then. Mining session over, and I've finished the trip to the Nether. It was not the best because sadly ResoluteDefender died and lost all of his stuff, which is a shame because it might be difficult for him to get back on the server. But I got some stuff, so I've got blaze rods. I got 4 blocks of diamonds, which was 36 diamonds in total. Yeah, I'm very impressed with what I've got so far. To work on the villager trading hall. Speak of the devil. Okay, so after a long time of building, I've been building this for about 5 days now. I mean, not consecutively and constantly, but I did the work. I got a bunch of villagers in, as you can probably hear, and I've got myself a trading hall. So I've got nearly every single enchantment here. I'm missing 1 or 2. I think this one this is the last one I did, and it's Riptide. So I'm missing Impaling, Loyalty, and the Bane of Arthropods one. But apart from that, I think I've got absolutely every single other enchantment under the sun. That's really good. And also, over here, I added a little bit of aquarium type thing, but we're actually... Ooh! Hey, a bunch of licorice fish have come to visit us. I might pinch one of those, actually. I've got all of these villages, and a really nice room as well. And I've also got a room back here for getting melons and pumpkins as a farm. And also, it made me think that I probably need some I probably need some emerald farm kind of thing. So what I think I'm going to do is outside here, you won't be able to see it yet, but off in the distance, if you can see, yeah, there's a pillar over there, and just behind there is a pillager outpost. If you know, I think it's Vindicators can drop emeralds, so I might actually make a pillager farm ever so soon. So, raid farm as well. I don't know what to call it, but maybe I might do that next episode. For now, I think I'm gonna end off the episode here. I've got my villager area looking very nice. We've introduced Kronos to the server. He's actually, upon recording this clip, oh, this is really loud. There we go. Upon recording this clip, he's spent already about 500 minutes on the server, which is really cool. I also helped make the mob farm, and I enchanted a ton of gear. I've got pretty much everything I need, though I will enchant this and get myself a different pickaxe. And I've got a nice little licorice here that I can put in the aquarium at home. And yeah, I hope you guys have enjoyed this episode. Thank you for watching, and yeah, I'll see you in episode 4. Bye!